All right. Hello, everyone, and today I would like to start, a potentially two-part series or multiple part series about religion and politics, or power and religion, right? So, many people. So we have this modern notion that there's a separation between the state and religion, that there's a separation between politics and, your beliefs in the divine. And, I would like to explain that there is no actual separation. Prior to, the way we understand today is that the government is a secular apparatus of how power is structured, and it's a hierarchy which regulates and controls the society and the economy, right? And we think the church is just like a cultural organization that's like separate from politics, and well, not exactly separate, but like not part of the official governing capacity of the central state of a nation state, right? Well, prior to this modern notion of a separation between church and state, no such separation was even perceived to exist, right? So, before Christianity became the dominant religion of Rome, well, even before and after that, right? Nobody really separated God from culture, right? People had many different gods that they believed in. So, if you were a pagan in pre-Christian Rome, you could believe whichever god you wanted. You could believe the god of thunder, the god of clouds. I'm just making shit up, right? So, like, the god of your city, the god of your local community, the god of the oak tree, the god of love, the god of Jupiter, right? Just like a million gods you can make up, right? And you can believe you could believe whatever god you want. And sometimes it was political, sometimes it wasn't, right? So people could just engage in whatever religious festival or ritual, and it would just be like a community activity, right? But sometimes it's political. If one religious cult is making too much of a political ruckus, and I don't know, they're becoming too powerful, or like they're doing something wicked or controversial that the government might squash it. But there's no inherent separation between religion and state. And the only time where they come into conflict is obviously if there's like some growing religion or cult that's challenging the government's rule, then you might get persecuted for that. You could get killed for that, right? Things happen. And so religion, you could say religion predated the modern understanding of a state, right? Modern states are very large, with millions of people often living under one governing body, right? And for modern states to emerge, so for imperial states or for very large states to arise, what had to happen was that the religious beliefs, the pre-existing beliefs of people, had to be co-opted and sublimated into the ruling apparatus, right? So, if you're, like a Roman, if you're a Roman official, and you want to acclimate a new colony into the Roman Empire, right? You can accept their gods into your pantheon, right? But you need to make sure that they also worship the Roman gods, right? At least pledge allegiance to them. Otherwise, if you're like insulting the Roman gods, right, that's actually a political statement, right? So it's not really. So it it's not like, okay, they really care if you believe in the Roman gods or not. No, you just have to respect them because it's a political convention, right? And then after you pay your respects, okay, you can just go back to worshiping, your local god, and yeah, that was it, right? But but without further ado, so I want to begin with an understanding of human nature, and then I'll give an explanation of how economies form, and then I will explain how humans go from primitive tribes to full scale civilizations, right? So there's many steps to this. So first let's briefly summarize what human nature is. So humans have a preference. Humans have preferences. They have wills. And by the way, my shift key is broken, so I can't really type capital. Like I can type capital because I have my control key as a shift key, but it's very difficult to type. So I'll just, if I'm not properly capitalizing, that's why. So humans have preferences, they have wills, right? They engage in purposeful behavior, right? Called action. So this is just praxeology, right? And action means they're doing something to obtain a goal. So humans are goal-directed beings, which makes them, they're consciously and rationally goal-directed beings, which makes them so what makes humans, unique from other animals is that we can not only achieve goals and be aware of it, but we can rationally deliberate over goals. Whereas animals, yes, they are like on an instinctive level, they are aware that they're achieving goals. Like, if a dog is like trying to seize a raw piece of meat, it's gonna, his biological receptors will like fire, and then he's gonna like jump towards the meat because he's hungry, right? But humans go a step further. So whereas animals act upon their biological, and you can even say purely mechanical instincts, humans have a rational faculty on top of that. So yes, we have the biological instincts, we have these primordial desires, but we also have the faculty to understand the world through logical propositions and mathematical calculations. And it's through our cognitive faculty and our ability to understand the world through abstraction and through chains of logical reasoning. But this is what distinguishes us from animals, right? Our rational faculty. And therefore, when we engage in purposeful behavior, when we engage in goal-seeking behavior, we are not like animals where we just instantly act on our immediate urges. That's what animals do, right? They can only understand an immediate reward and punishment mechanism, right? So you can train a dog to act a certain way. So if you want to train a dog to run in circles, then I don't know, maybe you can like find some method of doing this, right? So you can take a piece of steak and I don't know, you can walk around in circles and then make the dog chase you in circles, and then keep making him do this, and then like punch the dog in the face when it fails to run in a circle, right? So like now you've basically. So you've constructed a reward and punishment mechanism which the dog must respond to. So the dog now understands on the instinctive and primitive level that, okay, me run around in circle equals good because me get steak, right? And me not run around in circle equals bad because me get punched in the face, right? And obviously, this is, I'm just making an example of, right, a comedic and satirical example. I don't encourage punching dogs in the face, right? I must say this because, YouTube channel guidelines are strict. They might ban me, right? I love PETA, right? I love animals and whatnot, right? But so yeah, so that being said, you need to set up basically a scenario for an animal to condition his behavior, and this will work because an animal cannot realize that it is being set up in this way because it's simply, it's stupid. It's stupid in the sense that it lacks the rational faculty. It lacks the foresight to understand the consequences of his behavior. So it doesn't realize that running around in circles itself is a pointless behavior, and that the only value that he could derive from it is that you can obtain food, right? He's not going to deliberate that far. All the animal perceives is that, okay, it's just an immediate sensation of, okay, when I'm running, this is good because I get steak. When I'm not running, not only am I starving, but I'm getting punched in the face. So it's like, okay, there's different. So there's a perceptual landscape of negative and positive emotions, that the dog is feeling, right? There's positive and negative stimulations, and he can only act on these immediate stimulations, and he can't think ahead in the future, nor can he make, logical judgments about what is going on, right? He can't think, okay, maybe instead of, like running really fast in circles because that wastes a lot of energy, I should run really slowly in circles and see if my this guy giving me steak, like maybe he'll still give me steak if I put less effort in running, right? This will save me energy, right? Maybe it'll prolong my lifespan or something, right? Or maybe I should even consider like running away and finding someone else who will give me food without abusing me and punching me in the face, right? Like he's not going to think about alternatives from a rational standpoint. In fact, the concept of alternatives does not even exist. So yes, I suppose Ayn Rand is correct, right? Ayn Rand said that the hallmark distinction between animals and man is that man has a conceptual rational faculty, right? So we can form concepts which are abstract generalizations about our empirical experience derived from our sense data, right? And for these abstract generalizations, we can form associative chains of reasoning, and then once then we basically have syllogisms, right? You have a syllogism that's basically an understanding that allows you to generate your sensory information into logical propositions about the world, right? Propositions are just statements with a term and a predicate, meaning that something is affirmed or denied about a term. So through these propositions, you gain specific information about the world, right? And then these are it's very easy to, once you have a proposition, you understand it, right? It doesn't cost too much memory to retain it in your head. And then through these propositions, you can actually consciously modify your behavior rationally, right? You can modify your behavior according to abstract concepts, whereas like animals can't do this, right? They can't form the abstract concept in the first place, right? Because they're stuck on the sensorial level, right? They're stuck on the level of immediate sense perception, and they can't form concepts. Well, why is this the case? Well, one reason is, that look, I'm not a neuroscientist, but there's probably, some evolution or some genetic adaptation that permits a being to have rational faculty, right? And animals lack this, perhaps because they were able to survive in their environmental niches without this rational faculty, which is actually quite impressive. So like it's like, okay, animals could just survive on habits and immediate inclinations alone, right? They could rely on their most immediate and um visceral senses, right? Whereas humans, no, we could abstract away. We could, consciously like imagine, a different scenario where, okay, no, I don't need to give in to my immediate emotions and sensations right now. No, I can imagine myself, okay, tomorrow, if I don't eat this steak right now, and maybe I give it to someone else and he's my friend, okay, tomorrow, then he's gonna give me, I don't know, like 2 pieces of steak, and now, okay, now I'm better off, right? Or instead of immediately eating 10 apples today, maybe I should eat 2 and store the rest of the apples so that I can have a food supply and be able to engage in productive labor right after I store those apples, right? And animals not able to think like this, right? So I'm trying to explain what the difference between animalistic cognition and human cognition is, right? It's quite complicated, right? I'm trying to understand what actually is the qualitative difference, if it exists, and what is the source of this difference. So I think maybe it's not a qualitative difference, maybe it's a quantitative difference. Maybe it's that animals have intelligence, but not in a sufficient amount. And then the explanation for this would be simple. The source of the intellectual difference between animals and humans is simply their different evolutionary histories, like, and so I guess it's because that that humans were relatively physically weak, and they had very like flexible hands, which allowed them to like, they had very like, what's the word? They had very pliant and intricate. You can make very intricate movements with your fingertips and your limbs, right? Which allows you to sort of manipulate objects in a very detailed and specific way. And because your limbs are able to do this, because human limbs are able to do this, perhaps seemingly better than other species, and yeah, but I realized that primates also have the same like motor faculties. So I don't know why the primates didn't evolve to be intelligent as well. Because I was trying to make up an explanation, like, okay, maybe because of the intricate movements that we can are like fine motor skills of our body, right? Like us being able to make tools and like construct intricate designs upon nature, and like intricate designs upon nature, like for example farming or building a house, or like making tools like shovels and like a flint sort of cutting device, right? Because we can engage in intricate designs on nature. Maybe that's the source of our intelligence, because we just evolved to become better and better at intricate designs. And so there's some correlation between that and intellectual capacity, right? Like the ability to be able to hold in your mind more and more details about like particular designs on nature. Like the better you can do that, then if you evolve to be better at doing that, I suppose your working memory, your processing speed, and your ability to engage in complex abstract thinking would like improve through the generations. But I'm thinking, okay, why don't primates have this faculty? Why didn't this kind of evolution occur to primates? Okay, maybe it's because humans evolved in harsh winters, right? So it's very difficult to survive in like the Arctic, for example. Like you're out here covered in snow, right? How are you gonna survive, right? I suppose you have to hunt for fish. You have to hunt for wildlife like mammoths or whatever. And then so okay, you have to be able to communicate with your fellow humans. You have to be able to coordinate raids against wildlife. You have to store food, and so you have to think ahead and have foresight. You have to be able to develop clothing, like construct shelter, and you have to be able to, if you want to survive, you can't rely on your immediate sense perception, because all you're gonna get in the harsh winter is that, oh, you're cold. Okay, you're cold, now what? Because if your brain is just gonna be like, okay, I'm cold, I'm just gonna die now, I'm just gonna freeze to death. No, you can't do that. You have to figure out a way to survive. Well, how are you gonna survive in the harsh winter environment, right? Well, you have to devise a plan. So maybe at first it's just like, okay, so look, we're going to hide in this cave, okay, and then maybe someone comes up with the idea of fire, right? And then, someone's really good at fishing, right? And then over time, I don't know, somehow we survive, because like we're hunting mammoths every week, and like maybe sometimes, we cannibalize each other, maybe other times, where we're like, well, I suppose there's, it's not winter 24/7, so there's probably like times in the seasons where like you can grow some crops and then store them away for the future in the winter, right? So it's not like humans only evolved in the winter, right? But think about the selection event that would happen after like an ice age. Right, which kind of humans would survive? It would be the far-sighted ones who are able to store food and who were able to coordinate like complex plans for survival and continuous reproduction. And so these were the most intelligent humans. And so there was harsh Darwinian selection, which acted upon humans that made them uniquely intelligent as compared to other animals. So it's like for other animals, they have their immediate senses, whereas for us, our rational faculty is, you could say, an immediate sense, right? We can immediately think in terms of propositions. Well, not immediately, because like, children have to learn languages and have to be able to, like memorize like mathematical and linguistic concepts before they can form propositions, right? And obviously that takes a long time, but the capacity for this long-term cognitive development, from childhood to maturity, is something that you don't really see in other animals. For example, think of like I don't know, a chimpanzee. Is a chimpanzee going to go to school for 2 decades? Right, so humans are the only people with this kind of convention, where for the first 2 decades of your life, you're going to study linguistic, mathematical, technical concepts, right? You're going to engage in logical reasoning, right? You're going to practice thinking ahead. And that's because you have these pre-existing faculties and potencies already. And why do you have this kind of faculty? Because, your ancestors were of the few kind of primates who are able to survive through the harsh winters, right? They had to develop those. The only ones who had those kind of faculties of farsightedness and complex, intelligent deliberations were the ones that passed on their genes, right? And so it is strange. Like, why are we the only primates that are able to do this kind of intellectual thinking, right? And my thesis that, okay, we don't actually have a qualitative difference from animals in terms of our cognition. We just have a quantitative difference in intelligence. Like this, I think this is correct, but it's also counterintuitive. Like how precisely is our intelligence actually equivalent to a chimpanzee's intelligence, right? Right. So maybe if you put chimpanzees in harsh winter environments and made it very difficult for them to survive, maybe after like 100 generations, you would get chimpanzees that are intelligent or more intelligent than humans, right? because only the most intelligent genes would pass on. I don't know. This is just a lot of speculation. I'm just thinking out loud here. Right? So humans are uniquely intelligent among humans. No, uniquely intelligent among animals. And so they can engage in rational behavior. And hold on, let me check something. Yeah, sorry about that. I was just checking my DMs. Right, but humans weren't always as intelligent as we are now. So, right, let's think about human evolution, right? So humans were first, like primitive apes. So I suppose they were slumping. Hunchbacks, right? Sorry. So look, they're humans. Like first they were like slouching or whatever, right? And then they become more intelligent, right? So humans evolved, right? They're like primates. Here you got primates, right? And really the most important thing isn't that, they look like primates. People used to look like monkeys, right? And I'm just making an observation for educational purposes, okay? Do not make this a racialized issue. So, look. So like the most important aspect of human evolution is our increase in intelligence, right? So today, the average humans around the world is like around 90 IQ. That could be decreasing because of dysgenic trends that arise from post-industrial selection events and breeding patterns, right? This is just for educational and satirical purposes, right? And through a process of harsh Darwinian selection, the most intelligent and the most fit, the most well-adapted to the environment, so the strongest and most intelligent human beings disproportionately reproduced more than their less strong and intelligent counterparts, right? And that's why humans became more intelligent. So over time, our brains became bigger, right? So over time, right? Over time, our brains became bigger. Why did our brains become bigger? Because we became more intelligent, and humans were able to make designs on the environment. They were able to impose their will on the environment, and that's what makes humans unique to other animals. And now people are even criticizing this aspect of humanity. They're saying, no, we shouldn't destroy Mother Nature. No, we shouldn't destroy the wilderness and the environment. We should actually submit to Mother Nature, and we should actually not change the climate. We should actually become a passive recipient of Mother Nature's vacillations and vicissitudes. Vicissitudes, right? Vicissitudes? Is that a word? Am I saying the word correctly? Vicissitude. Vicissitude? Vicissitude? Why can't I hear? Sorry, I think my headphones is bugged. Sorry. Yeah, vicissitude. You probably can't hear on OBS because for some reason it's only capturing my mic on OBS. I mean, doesn't really matter. So look, vicissitude, right? Or oscillations, right? Variations, right? So environmentalists think we should be passive. We should be passive servants of their variational circumstances of nature, right? In other words, we should be passive recipients of the benefits and demerits of natural existence. But this is really a primitive view, right? This is a very primitivist view of nature, right? Because the very aspect of human existence that separates humans from other animals is that we can control nature. We can dominate and subjugate and transform nature according to our will, right? Nature doesn't impose its variation on us. We impose our desires and plans upon nature, right? Right? Because we have a rational faculty, so we can manipulate nature to our will, and we can change nature according to our demands. Whereas less intelligent animals, they can only be a passive recipient of the variations of nature, right? So really, environmentalism is an anti-human ideology, right? Because environmentalism says you should be a slave to unadulterated nature, which is what the environment by definition is. Whereas a pro-human stance would be, no, we should manipulate the environment for the interests of human beings, right? Because, I mean, what precisely do you owe to a leaf, right? It's like, do leaves, like, are we really gonna, sacrifice our children and our babies for the well-being of leaves? Like, are we really going to, sacrifice a human to save a penguin, or to sacrifice human lives or the quality of our lives just so icebergs don't melt? Like, it's crazy, right? And so the more intelligent humans become, the better they're able to manipulate the environment to their advantage. The better they're able to make tools, make shelters, and the better they're able to transform raw material into valuable goods that help us survive and enjoy life, right? And the more intelligent humans become, the better they are at communicating and cooperating with each other, right? Because very unintelligent humans, they are more like animals, right, than more intelligent humans. Right? So like very unintelligent, I'm talking like 50 IQ, right? I'm not talking about like normal humans. Right, and I don't want to say anything controversial here, so remember, all of this video is just for educational purposes, right? So if you're like a 50 IQ human, right, you probably can't think beyond your immediate desires because what is IQ? The G factor, it's basically a set of intellectual traits. It's explained by a set of intellectual traits like your working memory capacity, your ability to retain complex information, your mathematical ability, your ability to form like logical chains of logical deductions, right? So if you lack those faculties, if you lack intelligence, then all you have is your immediate sense data, which would be like your immediate emotional and visceral stimuli, right? So a 50 IQ person, they're not going to think very far ahead, right? So you can say, so less intelligent people will act on immediate whims, right? And more intelligent people will be farsighted and cooperative, right? Because they understand the benefits of long-term cooperation. Whereas if you act on immediate whims, you're not very intelligent, right? You can't think much because you just don't have the capacity to. But you just see another human being and you feel hungry, so you cannibalize the other human being. Whereas someone who's more intelligent will be like, okay, how about I befriend this guy, say, hey, I'm hungry, right? And then we can be friends. And then, we can live together harmoniously. We can farm together. We can come up with new ideas of how we can better survive. We can build shelter together, right? We can plant seeds together, metaphorically and literally, right? And then we can build a happy civilization together where we engage in mutually beneficial relationships. And basically, humans will prosper if we all think ahead and cooperate with other humans, right? And then there's the sense that we have a lot of shared interests, and so we can cooperate. And because we're intelligent, we can have a complex economy and division of labor, so our living standards will improve, right? And we'll live longer, right? We'll have healthier lives and healthier children, right? And so that's what a farsighted cooperative person would think. And the preconditions for being farsighted and cooperative is high intelligence. Whereas if you act on your immediate whims because you're low IQ, right? If you're low IQ, if you're very stupid, but you're not going to be able to think a year ahead. You're probably not able to even think 5 minutes ahead because you just lack the abstract thinking capacity. So you're just thinking, ooh, me hungry. I see this man. I'm going to kill him. And I'm going to eat his corpse, or like maybe because you got into fights before and you realize, okay, I can't just kill people because then someone's gonna beat me up. No, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna cannibalize him. I'm just gonna steal his property, right? Or okay, or I'll just do the bare minimum I need to survive. So like I'll just throw some seeds in the ground, and I'm not gonna care about like having the most meticulous and logical agriculture methods to ensure that I'm maximizing my crop growth and I'm maximizing the health of my plantation, right? So like okay, so who cares if my crops are like suboptimal and my carrots are like tiny? No, at least I have something to eat, right? I'm not gonna think, if I'm not very intelligent, I'm not even gonna think ahead. I'm just gonna do the bare minimum to survive, and that's it. Whereas and you probably aren't capable of doing more anyways, right? So with increased intelligence in human beings comes increased prosociality, increased farsightedness, and increased ability to solve complex problems. And this is what allows society to develop. Right? And so now let's take that model of increasing human intelligence and see what this actually means in practice, right? So humans begin as primitive like conflict-driven beings, right? So there's the law of the jungle. Right, so this is life in the wilderness, where it's basically survival of the fittest for the most part, right? People are just killing each other, right? Maybe they somehow able to invent swords and so everyone's killing each other because they're not very smart. They're not thinking far ahead. They're just thinking, okay, either I kill you or you kill me. I rob you or you rob me. So we're gonna kill each other. And maybe we'll form tribes, basically wolf packs, right? And so everyone's just killing each other. Okay? And then what happens is that over a long period of time, the more intelligent and stronger people will disproportionately pass on more of the genes, right? So there's going to be a differentiation. There's a positive differential in the genetic reproduction of more intelligent people versus less intelligent people, right? So the more intelligent people, will be better able to arrange their combat plans, and they're more likely to achieve victory. Therefore, they're more likely to pass on their genes to the next generation until people become more and more intelligent, right? This is just Darwinian selection. At some point, people become intelligent enough to form city-states, right? And then you form nation-states, right? You form entire nation-states where you have an entire government bureaucracy, right? Which is a bureaucracy, right? So this is right. So this is now we go to nation-states. Here's nation-states, right? And here's city-states, right? So we evolve from law of the jungle. We're just killing each other, and because we're stupid, we become more intelligent, and we realize, okay, let's cooperate with each other and have city-states. And then the city-states become bigger and bigger because we want to generalize and universalize and expand the benefits of cooperation. So cooperation with more people means, more opportunities for every individual, and a more thriving economy, more access to resources, right? And so you go from tribes. That's why you go from tribes to cities. So the process of human organizations going from tribes to city-states to nation-states is concomitant with humans being more intelligent. And intelligence is correlated with being more pro-social, being more cooperative, and being better at complex problem solving and thinking ahead, right? And so this is all of this is like a briefing on human nature, right? now let's now I want to give a brief understanding of economics, right? So this is gonna be very short, right? So in economics, basically the purpose of economics is to have transactions. And what are transactions? Transactions are mutually beneficial exchanges. So look, this is a transaction. It's a mutually beneficial exchange, right? And so this falls. So this a transactional action, right, where both parties benefit from an exchange is called cooperation. So look, let's say that these two guys, they're going to trade an apple for an orange. Because they're voluntarily agreeing to this trade, then it's that this guy says, I want an apple. So look, I want an apple more than an orange, right? And this guy is like, okay, so I want an orange more than an apple, right? So what happens is that they both profit, right? So this guy profits from this transaction, and this guy profits. They both profit from this transaction because they lose what they wanted less and they gain what they wanted more. So this is the definition of profit, and it's based on the relative subjective value of different goods, right? So and why do humans have such subjective values? Because they have preferences, as I explained. They have different preferences, and preferences are just rank orderings of different items in reality, right? So like there's a value hierarchy, and you value certain things more than others, right? Maybe you value an apple more than an orange, right? You value chocolate more than vanilla ice cream, right? So yeah, this is just praxeology. And so this is a mutually beneficial exchange. This is called a transaction. This falls under the category of cooperative activities. And this is the basis of not just economics, but civilization, right? Even relationships are mutually beneficial exchanges, right? So you exchange your time with someone else because you both benefit, right? Otherwise, why are you hanging out with your friend if you don't both benefit? If not, that's a toxic relationship. You need to cut them off, right? The reason you marry your wife is because you both benefit from that relationship. And if that's not the case, then you should divorce, right? So let me explain the different kinds of human interactions, right? So what is human action? Human action is purposeful behavior, right? Now we're going to look at interactions, right? Where there's multiple people and their actions are affecting each other, right? So we're going to look at interactions. Right, so you could say that there's like three main types of interaction, right? There's like solitude / no interaction, where you don't interact with people at all. So we're gonna ignore this, right? This category doesn't really matter. Okay, it's not relevant. And then there's mutually beneficial interactions, where both parties benefit, right? Both parties benefit from the interaction, right? So it's a win-win scenario. And then this is called cooperation. It's called cooperation. This is called peace, right? And so, okay, I guess you could say solitude or no interaction is also peace. And then here's conflict and warfare, right? Right. So what is conflict or warfare? It's either unilaterally beneficial interactions, or mutually destructive interactions. Right? So what is a unilaterally beneficial interaction? It means one person typically gains at another person's expense. So let's say I steal your car, right? I benefit because I get a new car, and I can, impress your girlfriend and steal her from you, right? Or, I punch you in the face, I run away, right? I benefit because, I enjoy punching people in the face. I gain happiness. I profit at your expense. Or like, basically stealing. So stealing is the best example of a unilaterally beneficial interaction, right? Another example is like the Federal Reserve printing money out of their ass, right? So they print money out of thin air. They put it in their own pockets. So the central bankers steal your money by printing money out of their ass and giving it to themselves and their cronies. And then your currency is devalued, right? So they can print money out of they could just print fiat out of their ass. And then they can buy up whatever resources they want, right? They can just print trillions. And then, so then what happens is that this counterfeit money, right? If anyone else just printed money out of thin air, it would be considered counterfeit. But when the government does it through the Federal Reserve, it's considered monetary policy. But the Federal Reserve is a criminal organization, right? So they print money out of their ass. They just buy whatever they want, right? And then now there's more money circulating in the economy. And because there's more fiat circulating in the economy, now each individual dollar is worth less, right? Why? Because there's more money chasing fewer items in the economy, right? Because these thieves already took, some of the limited set of items in the economy, right? Remember, economics implies scarcity, right? Well, at least conventional economics, right? Scarcity means there's not enough goods for everyone who wants it, and there's a limited set of goods, right? So, like, let's say there's 100 Lamborghinis, right? And I just print money out of my ass. I didn't earn any money. I didn't do anything productive for anyone. I didn't benefit anyone in a mutually beneficial transaction, right? I didn't provide a service. I just print money out of my ass, and I buy 10 Lamborghinis. Now there's only 90 Lamborghinis left for everyone else. So I just stole from people, right? So the Federal Reserve is an example of theft. Taxation is a more blatant example of theft. Taxes, right? Straight up theft, stealing, right? That's a unilaterally beneficial interaction, right? It could be like, oh, okay, sometimes they build roads and like build bridges and like, go back to public education and like, provide military services, right? Provide national defense, right? The issue is that often these public services are very inefficient because the incentive in the private sector, right, in a for-profit business, is that they have to provide you good services because if they don't provide good services, then you can just leave. You can just run away, right? And you can, like, for example, if a gym, let's say you voluntarily pay for gym membership, and so every day you're showing up to the gym, right? But then the bodyguards are like beating people up, and like people like the dumbbells, nobody picks up the dumbbells and puts it back on the rack, and like they like the pull-up bar is broken. Like you try to like do a pull-up, and then like you fall down on the ground, you break your leg, right? And so so what do you do, right? You leave, you never come, well, certainly at the bare minimum, you're never going to go back to this gym. You're not going to give them any more money. And because it's a voluntary business transaction, it's a voluntary transaction, right? The gym just loses money and they go bankrupt, right? And then you go to a better gym that's providing better quality services, and now that gym gets more money, and so now there's more investment into the better gym, right? And so so now you have a functioning gym where the treadmills actually work, where the bodyguards are actually protecting you, right? So the government, so those are private sector transactions. Public sector transactions are very different, right? Because it's funded by taxation, aka theft, right? So with a for example, if you live under a government healthcare system, right, where it's presumably free, if they don't provide the healthcare you want, right? If let's say you have cancer, but you have to wait 10 months to get cancer treatment, you're put on a waiting list, right? You don't even have the option of going to an alternative because the government has a monopoly on healthcare, so you just have to wait 10 months, right? You don't even have the chance to like pay more. So like that's why a lot of people in, so like the Canadian healthcare system is public, right? That's why a lot of people fly out of Canada to go to America for medical treatment because it's better there, right? It's private, it's more privatized in America, even though America has its own healthcare problems, right? Because there's too much public funding in it, right? Or like, so just think about it, right? There's no incentive to actually provide service because you could just steal more money, right? Why would you actually provide positive services that benefit people when you just steal money, right? For taxation. So like let's compare a private defense agency to a government military, right? So a private defense agency would be like, okay, you pay $100 a month, and what happens is it's like insurance, right? So a bunch of consumers will pool money together, and with this private defense agency, there'll be a contract, right? So that if your house gets invaded by foreigners, right? If your house gets invaded by aggressive people, and they try to steal your TV, they want to steal your house, they want to murder your children, right? This private defense agency, right? It's basically a private military. So they're going to send their troops and they're going to defend you, right? And so it's a mutually beneficial arrangement, right? Where they get money and you get defense. On the other hand, a government military, you're paying them a lot of money, right? So like, I don't know, states nowadays, all these nation states, they spend way too much on military. And maybe they're just, a lot of times the military guys, right, they're just standing around doing nothing, or they're actively like killing innocent people, or like all they're doing is, intimidating people so that they don't dodge taxes, right? So like if a private defense agency isn't actually protecting you from criminals, then you cut them off, you stop giving them money, and they'll probably go bankrupt, and then you'll find a better defense provider. But if your national military is failing to protect you from criminals, and if you're like if your national security apparatus and your national military apparatus is sending your children into a drafted combat into Iran, right? Let's say America announces a draft, and like basically they'll say, okay, now 1 million children need to die in the Israeli-Iran conflict, right? For example, you can't be like, yo, hey, I'm gonna stop paying the American military because now they're gonna go bankrupt if I stop paying them because they're not providing the services I want. Rather than providing me goods like defense, they're providing me bads like killing my children, right? Rather than the American military providing the outcome I want, which is protecting me at a reasonable price. Instead, they're stealing my money through taxation, and they're taking my children and causing them to die in a pointless war in the Middle East, right? So, but you can't just stop giving the American military money, because then they'll come after you and they'll kill you, right? Because that's what taxation is. They steal your money by force, and if you try to defend yourself against them, they kill you or they send you to jail, right? So that's all of these actions are in the category of conflict or warfare, right? Unilaterally beneficial transactions. And you can also imagine mutually destructive interactions where we fire a missile at each other and we both die, or we get into a fight each other and we both end up dying, right? Or like we both steal from each other in equal amounts. Is that? I guess that's a mutually destructive interaction. Yeah. So we both steal $100 from each other, and because we wasted time stealing and we accomplished nothing, that's just a opportunity cost with no profit, right? Or another mutually destructive interaction is like, I don't know, we bomb each other's cities. It's like, what do we gain from that, right? So there's three kinds of interactions. There's cooperation/peace, which is in mutually beneficial interactions. There's conflict or warfare, which is within unilaterally beneficial interactions or mutually destructive interactions. And then there's solitude or no interaction, which I suppose would fall in the category of peace, but it would just be no interaction, right? So yeah, these are the different kinds of human interactions there are, right? And now, so okay, so hold on, I'm checking my DMs. Yeah, okay. No updates. Anyways, let me close it. Yeah, hopefully it recorded everything. So, now, those are the different types of human interactions. And so an economy is based on cooperation fundamentally, and sometimes there are parasitic actors in the economy that engage in conflict instead, right? These are called aggressors, right? So aggressors are like criminals, so like either robbers or, you know, taxation agencies or Federal Reserve agents, right? So, but let's forget about involuntary transactions. So let's forget about conflict-driven interactions. Let's forget about mutually destructive or unilaterally destructive interactions. Let's focus just on mutually beneficial transactions in the economy, right? So this is the voluntary, right? The free market. Right? This is how you could say an economy is like supposed to be if efficiency and, you know, mutually beneficial transactions are maximized. So voluntary market. So, yeah, you get the idea. So look, so we need to understand the concept of profit and loss, right? So I already explained that, you know, when you trade something you want for something you don't want, right? When you trade, so if you want an apple more than you want an orange, and then you give away an apple to gain an orange, you're profiting, right? So eventually humans agree on a medium of exchange called money. And why do they do this? So that you don't have to run into the problem of a double coincidence of wants. So a double coincidence of wants is, you know, so let's say the only supplies you have is apples, or like, I don't know, it could be any supplies like bread, cows, right? You only have one commodity to provide people, but you want a specific commodity. And the issue is that it's not just that someone else in existence must have what you want, right, in the market, right? So you're in the market right now and you want oranges, right? So it could be the case that nobody's selling oranges, okay, or nobody's selling the item you want. But let's say someone is selling the item you want. What if you're not selling the item they want, right? So what if so you want oranges, but the guy who wants oranges wants cows, but you don't have any cows, right? So the double coincidence of wants is an issue, and it's resolved economically through a medium of exchange, right? And so with a medium of exchange, now you have a homogeneous unit of value, right? It's a store of value. And so now you can make profit and loss calculations that are almost objective, right? They're intersubjective, right? Because value is subjective anyways, right? So just profit and loss. Right, for money. Right, this money, right? And so and then now, and then comes the concept of, assets and liabilities, which is like a corollary of profit and loss. So assets and liability basically assets are what have capacity to cause profit, right? Have capacity to cause loss, right? And so now wealth accumulation is possible because at some point, if the society is cooperative enough and economically productive enough, and there's a complex division of labor, and people respect private property rights because they're engaging within the actions of cooperation rather than conflict and warfare, right? Then there's the concept of private property, which allows people to benefit from mutually beneficial transactions in the long run by storing their wealth away, right? So, you can provide services like building houses, making bread, playing an instrument, like, selling shoes, making clothes, right? You have a service and then people's giving you resources in exchange, right? This time, it's not just resources, it's the currency of value itself, right? So they're giving you money, and now you can store away this money, and now you can have long-term wealth accumulation, which is measured through profit and loss and assets and liability equations, right? Now the concept of wealth can be understood. Right. And so let's think about, okay, so humans have advanced from tribalistic primitivism, and they're beginning to form civilizations. And why do they form civilizations? Because they realize the benefits of the division of labor, which is a complex economy where individuals specialize in their respective productive field, right? So in their field of expertise, so that they're good at one set of activities, but not very skilled at everything else. So they rely on each other to provide services, right? Not only do they rely on each other to provide services because they're not good at anything else, but because they spent all of their time and resources only focusing on one craft, they're exceptionally good at that craft, right? So that's why the economy is exceptionally efficient, and basically everyone can more or less get what they want because A, they're providing something of value, and B, someone else is providing something of value, right? Because they're all experts in their field and they're trading with experts in their respective fields, right? So everyone's cooperating in this civilization. Everyone's reaping the benefits of a division of labor. And so, okay, you have a society, right? And what you have to understand is that there's scarcity in society, right? There's scarcity in the economy, right? Yeah, my shift key is broken. I have to like press down on my control key to capitalize, which makes typing very difficult. So forget about scarcity. Why is it? Do you see the text box? It's like glitching out. Scarcity. Limited resources. Not enough to fulfill the demands of everyone. Right? So the economy exists in a state of scarcity. It's always been this way. Maybe in the future, somehow you'll have a utopia where we have super abundance instead, right? So maybe we can actually achieve a post-scarcity world. That would be impressive. But historically, and even now, the economy has always existed in a state of scarcity. So because of this, not every human is wealthy, right? Humans differ in their wealth. Some of them have enough resources to survive, some of them don't. So there's a hierarchy of, according to wealth and basically power, right? So there's a power hierarchy, right? Jordan Peterson would say a dominance hierarchy, right? So there's a hierarchy of humans, and most people are at the bottom, right? Because there's just so few resources, right? And there's not enough productive capacity in the economy to suffice everyone's needs and demands, right? So right? So here's right. So basically, in every society there exists a caste system based on you could say wealth and acquisitions. You could say accumulated wealth, right? People differ in their wealth and their economic power, right? So this is the hierarchy of economic power. Right, so here's the very bottom, right? So here's like, well, I don't know why, bro, this is bugging. Why? So look, I tried to make a text box here and it teleports downwards. How? Why? Wait. What? How is this even possible? Okay, whatever. I'll just have to get used to it. So, look. What? Why? See, look, I'm typing. Right? I'm typing into the text box, and the word is somehow projected upwards. How is it possible? It's like, what? It's like, it's like it's the word suspended, like upwards. Like, what is happening? The word is being abstracted away. Right? Okay. Anyway, so here's the slaves. Right? So here's the slaves, the bottom caste of society. Right? The untouchables, you can say. And then here's the peasants, right? The commoners. Right. And so these guys are doing physical labor, probably. Right. For the most part. And then there's I guess rich peasants. Right, you can say so middle class would be like right, moderately wealthy, labor. All right, so let me see if I can fix the glitch. No. Okay, I'm just gonna reload. Okay, it's better now. Okay, so look. So look, you got slaves. You got commoners. You got middle class. Right? Moderately. Wealthy. Laborers. Okay, they might be... middle class are probably like moderately wealthy, like laborers, artisans, and like skilled craftsmen, like skilled trade people, right? And then merchants, right? And then you have like and then I suppose you would have like landlords, right? Now you have the asset holding class here, right? And then you have the nobility, right? And so here is the caste system of society, the economic caste system of society, right? And so, okay. So, typically people will progress up the ladder. Like, most likely you're going to be here. So 50% of people are probably like somewhere here, right? You would think, at least. Or even more than that, like maybe like 60% is here. Right. Probably more than that. Right. Most people, so imagine you're spawning into society, right? You're most likely gonna be broke. Okay, like today, more people would be living in standards that compared to the Dark Ages, right? The average person is probably more like a nobleman in the Dark Ages, even though they might be like just middle class in today's society, right? But today people say, "Oh, I'm in the middle class, moderately wealthy, blah blah blah." Like these are kind of arbitrary categories, just subjective, right? But I'm just assuming like this is when civilization first started and a caste system emerges, right? So like you can think of the Dark Ages, you can think of I don't know, any era in history you can think of, right? I'm not a history buff, okay? So maybe I don't know, the Bronze Age or something, like the like let's say ancient Greek, ancient Rome, right? Some ancient society, there existed economic hierarchy, right? And so imagine you're spawning into society. You're most likely going to be rich. You're most likely going to be broke. But you do have an opportunity to become wealthy. And if you don't have an opportunity to become wealthy or to gain wealth, then maybe your children do, right? So like, you know, there are many different ways to become wealthy. There are many different ways to move up the social ladder. One way is to work really hard and profit a lot. And once you have a lot of profit, then you can save money and you can acquire assets, right? And so the assets you generally want to acquire because it's stable in value and, you know, it gives you leverage in negotiations, right? It's land, houses, right? Right, equipment, right, productive equipment, right, the means of production, you could say. And nobility is just like, right, the wealthiest of the bunch, right? So nobility is so here. So at this point, we're getting like up here. Right, like up here, this is like probably the top 10%. So look, so let's say you're spawning in to society. In most cases, you're gonna be poor, right? Let's say you start out as a slave. Like we're gonna go from rags to riches, right? Let's say you start out as slaves and actually, I think the commoners are a bit too much. I mean, a bit too little. So let's say that you're just spawning into society. Most likely you're gonna spawn in as a commoner or like very low middle class. Right, in like a functional economy, but not like a rich one, right? Not like a modern economy, just like a medieval economy, let's say, or like an ancient economy, right? So you're spawning into a pre-modern society. Most likely, you're going to spawn in as a commoner or like a low middle class. But let's have the rags to riches story. So you're going to spawn in as a slave, and then you're going to work your way up to be a commoner, and then you're going to work your way up to be middle class or moderately wealthy, and then you're going to work your way up to be a landlord, and then you're going to work your way up to be nobility. How does this happen? Well, you're probably not going to be able to accomplish all of this in one generation. So your family has to, your future children has to carry on the legacy. So how do you go from slave to commoner? Well, you provide excellent service to your master, right? The family who owns you. And maybe they will provide you or your children with money or other resources that you can leverage, and then you can gain profit or assets. And eventually you can become a commoner and maybe even have your own place to live, have your own like little farm, right? And then have your own set of assets, right? Maybe this will need to happen over generations, right? So like maybe for your whole life you're a slave, but because the family who owns you like has respect for your children, has respect for you, therefore they have respect for your children, so they give your children some money and some resources, and like they give them like they help them build like a small house, and like they give them a small farm. So now your children has property, right? And then your children keep improving their economic situation, and then now their children, so your grandchildren, are middle class, right, with a bigger house and bigger farm, and then their children, so your great grandchildren, become landlords, right? So now they have multiple houses, and then your great right? So your children, right, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren, and your great grandchildren, right? You have a bunch of them, so they have a lot of children because they can afford it, right? And then through their connections, through their talent, through their hard work, and through their economic skills, right? Through their productivity for them, because they provide services to the community, they save up money, they save up assets, and they buy more houses, and they become very rich, right? And so they become the nobles of the land, right? So the process of going from a slave to a nobleman, right? The process of going from impoverished to rich isn't even going to happen in your lifetime. Maybe you'll make very slow progress in your lifetime, but it's something that the family legacy carries on intergenerationally. And so that's why, the concept of the clan and clan loyalty is so important. Well, even now, but especially in historically, because really all your opportunities and all your life outcomes are like very strongly determined by, who your parents are and, what you can provide for your children as a parent, right? So the process of going from poor to rich, the rags to riches story doesn't happen in a life. It happens over multiple lifetimes through one lineage and through one bloodline, right? For one clan, right? And so how do people go from landlords to nobility? Because what does nobles mean? Nobles doesn't just mean a guy who owns a lot of land. Like, they're not just super landlords that, they own like, so if you own 5 properties, you're a landlord. But if you own 100 properties, now you're suddenly a noble, right? No, that's not how it works. It's that a person is considered nobility, yes, because he's very wealthy, but also because he's very trusted and respected among his fellow people. Otherwise, they can rob him and not refuse to economically trade with him. They can refuse to have any social relationship with him. They can cast him out of society, ostracize him. They can revolt against him for being too powerful, right? So, people can throw you out of society. So the only way you can become a nobleman is if enough people in society likes you, right? So let's continue this explanation. Right? So let's say that this is the Bob clan, right? Your last name is Bob, okay? Your first name is Bob and your last name is Bob, right? This is the Bob clan. And so over 10 generations, right? That's like what, 250 years or something? They went from they went from broke peasants to rich landlords, right? So they used to own 0 houses. So their assets went from so 250 years ago. So let's say in the year 0, right? They had $0 and they owned 0 houses, okay? And let's say in year 250, right, they have $10,000, which is a lot back then. Like nowadays with inflation, because people are engaging in Keynesian economics and all kind of like devil worship, and people are like printing money out of their ass because they're retards, right? Now money is worthless, right? $1 is worthless now, but back then $10,000 is a lot. Like $10,000 back then, like you could probably like build like 10 churches with that, bro. You could like build like a mansion, bro. You could probably build like a massive swimming pool. Like you could do a lot with $10,000. Now you can't even buy a car with that, right? Not like an amazing one, at least. Maybe like a used car, whatever. So, and now you have your entire family has 100 houses, right? Okay, let's not get crazy, okay? 100 cows, okay? Like you have all these items, right? And then like a bunch of and you have a bunch of debt contracts, right? So like bonds or whatever, or just like literal IOUs, right? So because you're rich, so you lend other people money, right? So they're gonna pay you back, and maybe you add interest to that, right? So maybe you give someone $5,000, and then they say, okay, I'll give you $6,000 back in like a year, right? And obviously, interest is going to exist. People apparently usury is like a very controversial concept, right? But the reason interest exists is because $100, you would rather have $100 today than $100 tomorrow, all else equal, right? Like obviously, if you choose between having the same Lamborghini today or tomorrow, right? Obviously, you're gonna pick to have it today, all else being equal. Or if you choose to have, let's say, let's make an absurd example. Like, would you rather have a steak dinner today or in 200 years? Well, obviously you want to have the steak dinner today, right? So would you rather have a gift card for your favorite restaurant today or on your 200th birthday? Obviously you want to have it today because you'll be dead by then, right? So it's a law of praxeology that people prefer future goods over... Sorry, it's a law of praxeology that people prefer current goods over future goods, right? So people devalue the future according to their time preference, right? But people always prefer the same good in the future rather than the same good later, right? This is just a economic law, and I have to go to the washroom, so hold on. Right, so now I can see here that hold on, I gotta wash my hands a bit better. right? So you can see here that over time, the family, so there's a bunch of people in the Bob clan, right? All of their last names is all Bob. They all have the same founding ancestor, right? So Bob got a lot of baby mamas, right? And so you can see that these are all assets, right? And so over time, they've built up a reputation, right, of trustworthiness, productivity, right, positive contribution to the community. Right, so, and then that's how they become nobility. Right, so why do people go from being wealthy, asset-holding landlords to nobles, right? Imagine a feudalistic economy, right? Why does it happen? Well, because certain landlords, not only are they very wealthy, but they are considered to be more trustworthy, more productive, and more positive for the community. And they do good. They do more social goods for other people than other landlords. And so some landlords are considered nobles, and that only increases their wealth. So even more people donate to them, or want to do business with them. Want to help build them houses. Want to provide services for them, right? Want to, give tutoring lessons to their children, want to marry them, right? Want to engage in conversations with them, want to engage in social networking with them, right? So, so what's the opposite? The exact opposite. So let's say you become your family over a span of 250 years, your family over the generations, all of them are very productive, all of them are hardworking, all of them have great social skills, and they're providing for the economy. They're donating to charity. They're helping build churches. They're making the people around them happy. They're networking with people, like right there. They're providing community feasts with their some of their saved money. They're also investing into real estate. They're investing into means of production. Right, they're becoming richer. So your family over time not only is generation after generation getting more rich, but the reputation of the family is improving, right? And what would be the opposite? If your reputation of your clan didn't improve and you were somehow able to become very rich, then people will label you as a criminal and people will say you're corrupt. And so they might steal from you, they might kill you. So like the people, right? Because remember, your family is outnumbered by the community, right? So the people around you, if they don't like you very much, but they see that you have accumulated all this wealth, maybe by stealing from people, maybe by engaging in fraud, maybe by like doing shady business practices, maybe by like backstabbing people or not paying back your debt, right? Let's say you just engage in wicked things and you're the opposite of trustworthy, right? You're slimy, you're nefarious, right? So if you engage in negative behavior towards the community, then they can ostracize you, they can kill you, they can steal from you, right? They can refuse to do business with you, they can refuse to network with you, they can refuse to be your friend, they can refuse to provide you with services, and then so you're isolated and you're gonna go broke or you're gonna die, right? Right. So yeah, that's why reputation is very important if you want to become a noble. So once you have this reputation, you've built up your family has built up a positive track record, and you're very wealthy. That's how you become nobles. And this is the source of political power: reputation plus wealth accumulation. So this is political power: reputation plus wealth accumulation. And this is how the nobility rises, right? So right? So this is society, right? There's all these people. Most of them are commoners, and then there's some, and then these are the nobles, right? They have. Okay, maybe I shouldn't make them literally giants. Okay, sure. We'll use the metaphor. Okay. So most people are commoners. So everyone else is a commoner except 3 people, right? So okay, let's put actually. Okay, every tall. So I'm engaging in heightism, height discrimination here, but every tall person is someone of high social status, right? So everyone except these 5 people are commoners, right? And all of them are in the same society. This guy is a landlord, right? And he has, let's say, 7 houses. He owns 7 houses, right? And he's got like, and he has 10,000. Let's say he has $500, right? $2,000, right? This guy's a landlord, right? And we're gonna say he has 10 houses, okay? And this guy, he has 9 houses, right? So these guys are he has $1,000, right? And let's assume that none of the commoners have more than 2 houses or $800. So let's say none of the commoners have more than 2 houses or $800, so they're broke compared to these landlords, right? And then you have these nobles, right? You have nobles. So this guy has 30 houses. He's got $5,000, right? And this guy got, right? Another noble, right? Got 50 houses, right? This guy got $7,000, right? So power accumulates to the tippity top, right? So the more power you have, so power can be expressed through wealth, connections, and reputation. The more connections you have, the easier it is to make more connections, because ceteris paribus, right? All else being equal, you want to be connected to the guy who already has more connections, because he's already an established person. You know you can trust him based on the track record with other people. B, he can't just default on a loan, so he can't just refuse to pay you back or like run away if he does business from you or steal your money, right? Because then there's a bunch of people who know him and who can hold him accountable. Right? And C, because you can gain power yourself if you're networking with someone who already has an extensive network himself. So those with more power will accumulate more power because it's easy. So because it's easier for someone with more power to get more power, right? Therefore, power accumulates to the hands of the few, and therefore power exists in a very disproportionate and unequal form, right? Power is allocated in an unequal form. Right, so these guys, so the 2 nobles are the tail end of the economic and power elites of this society, right? So these are the political leader, right? This is the political leader. These guys are political leaders. Because why did they become nobles? Because enough people trust them, right? Especially the landlords. The other powerful people have to trust them. So these guys are high status, right? So like, let's say that So these are the least powerful people in society. The commoners are the least powerful people in societies. Obviously, their opinions matter to some extent, right? Right. So let's say that this is a complex, interconnected economy, and everyone's interacting with each other, right? And let's say that the political leader number one. So political leader number one, he's very hardworking, and he's very talented. He's very intelligent. He's farsighted. He does a lot of public good, and he provides a lot of valuable services to people through his work, right? And let's say he's a great merchant, and all his family members are like skilled artisans or musicians or like construction workers, right? And so this guy's the head of the family, so he's the richest one. And let's say political leader 2 is similar, except he's not as talented, and he doesn't have as many skills, but he's still a very well-respected artisan and tradesperson, right? So let's say this guy's the manager of let's say number 2 is the manager of a construction company. Number 1 is like a merchant who's like basically, now he sells furniture. Okay, I don't know. He sells furniture and he sells apples and oranges. He has a fruit stand or whatever. These guys are entrepreneurs, right? So they become the de facto political leaders of the society because through their actions, right, not just by accumulating wealth, but through their superior reputation and through positively influencing everyone in mutually beneficial exchanges, and through their economically sound and morally sound and ethically sound decision making, over time, they and their families become very rich. And these two guys become the wealthiest nobles in their area, right? They become the wealthiest landlords, and people recognize them and people respect them, right? Otherwise, if they didn't respect them, they can get them killed, they can ostracize them, they can exile him from society, they can refuse to do business with them, they can burn down their houses, they can jump them, right? They can beat them up, right? So they like them enough to keep them around, right? So these are the nobles of the society, and that's how political leaders are formed. And let's say these two nobles, okay, they're recognized as the political leaders. Let's say they both get very ambitious and they say, I want to have a monopoly of power over this area. So both of these nobles are very powerful, right? And they want to basically create a government, right? So for a government, they can regulate the economy and the culture of their area, right? This will benefit them because then they can tax people, right? So they can provide like legal services to people and resolve their disputes and whatnot. And as long as they're paid a fee, right? And because they have so many resources, they can, they can make people fight for them, whether by paying them to fight or like, even just people will be willing to fight on their behalf, right? Just because of their reputation, right? So because they're so powerful, they can be the de facto governors of the area, right? And so they can even hire their own like small military forces just by themselves. And because they have so many connections that if there's ever a conflict or a war happening, they can just contact all of their connections, all of the other landlords they know, and then they can like pool all their resources together, and like they can engage in warfare, they can engage in defense of their land, right? And they can, engage in insurance policies and undertake public goods contracts. Undertake like very large scale public projects, like building a big church, like building a massive like shopping mall, for example, right? Right. But let's say one of them wants to be king, okay? So there's all these noblemen, there's all these powerful people. One of them wants to be king, and another guy's like, no, I want to be king too. So now there's two people competing for the throne. So there's two possible ways this can go down. One possible way is that they agree based on just reading the temperature of the political situation. So like if one guy's clearly more powerful, if one guy has more backing, because like if there's one competitor for the throne and there's like way more nobles backing him, there's way more peasants who like him, right? He has way more resources, then the other king should probably quietly step down and support the other guy and let this guy be king, right? He's the most qualified, his clan is the most well-established, they have the best, relatively most extensive reputation, and they have the most assets, right? This guy's the king, okay? The other way is they have a war, and it's like, even if they have a war, I think often after a short war, it's quite obvious, like in a feudal society, who's going to win. So probably if you're a king and if there's two kings fighting for the throne, well, you know, maybe at some point, one of them's going to burn out of resources, right? And at some point, one of at some point, you know, their knights, their fighting men, their military men, they're going to run out of a will to fight, right? And they're gonna run away, right? So really, you know, just because a conflict occurs for the throne doesn't mean that a lot of bloodshed will like occur. Like, yeah, some bloodshed will occur, but usually the friends, the family, and the advisors of the losing king will be like, yo, you should just surrender, have a peace treaty, give the winning king some money, give the victor some money, and just leave it at that, right? And just accept this new status quo. Right. Otherwise, you know, if the war drags on, maybe you die, maybe your family dies, maybe all your military men die, right? Maybe you lose all your money and your land, right? So okay, just surrender, right? But in any case, okay, whatever happens, now there was once an aristocracy. There were once many competing, powerful people, and now there's one king. And yeah, people are still going to compete for power after a king is named. But the point is that this is how kings emerge, right? So why do people want to become king? People want to become king because they will have a claim to a power monopoly over the land. They will have a claim to have the decision-making monopoly over a territory, right? This is the formation of a monarchic state. So if I'm the king, I can do whatever I want on this land, meaning I can steal from people through taxation. I can kill anyone I want if someone doesn't like me, right? If there's a beautiful woman I see walking down the street, right? Well, I can ask her to marry me, right? And she probably won't say no, or even if she says no, I can, you know, kidnap her brother for ransom and like basically beat him up and then, you know, like coerce her into marrying me, right? So, or like, you know, if I want to burn down someone's house, I can probably get away with it, right? Or I could do whatever I want, right? Of course I want to be king. I can abuse my power. Or I can just, you know, enjoy the status, enjoy the benefits, right? But obviously I can't get away with too much corruption because there's people competing for my throne. There's other noblemen who want me dead if I'm like making a ruckus and I'm like doing unethical and unproductive, anti-productive things, right? If I'm messing people up, if I'm beating people up, if I'm being abusive and tyrannical, then, you know, people can kill me, right? People can outnumber me and kill me. My own servants can revolt against me, my own military men, right? So, yeah, so that's why people want to be king. And this is how nobles emerge. And this is how kings emerge out of the nobility, right? And so, remember, a king only emerges because enough noblemen. So I already explained how nobles emerge from just a feudal landholding system. But how do kings emerge from nobles, right? It's because enough nobles trust the king to, you know, want him to be the powerful guy in charge, right? Because you do want a king above you in the power hierarchy, right? Because the problem with being a noble is that you're scared that other nobles are going to kill you or rob you or take your children for ransom or like mess you up, right? Or steal your money, or like, so you do want someone more powerful than you that you can appeal to in times of help, right? So like you don't want to you want to feel like, hey, if someone messes with me, if another powerful family wants to coerce me, they want to kick me off my land, they want to steal my property, they want to do injustice upon me, I want to have someone more powerful than me to appeal to. And that's why nobles will start backing other nobles, right? Nobles will start backing nobles that are more powerful themselves and become allies with them and be like, hey, let's be friends, okay? Let's have a positive economic relationship where maybe I give you money, you give me services, or like just we're gonna network, okay? We're gonna maybe we're even gonna intermarry, but we're gonna help each other out, okay? So like if I get attacked, I help you, I help defend you. If you get attacked, right, I help defend you. If I get attacked, you help defend me, right? So political alliances and factions start to form. And basically, whoever becomes king is generally the guy who's backed by more nobles and who more of the commoners are fans of, right? And so, because there's a serious insecurity of if you're a noble, right? You really want a more powerful strongman to make sure that, okay, if someone attacks my brother's property, if someone attacks my children, if someone does something terrible to my daughter, right? If someone just starts beating up me and my friends, yes, maybe I can defend myself, but what if I'm being attacked by someone who's also equally as powerful as me? Then you want someone more powerful to appeal to, right? And then a bunch of nobles get together and be like, yo, this guy should be king because his family is well established. All the commoners like him. Us nobles agree that he's trustworthy, right? He's good to do business with. He always pays back his debts. He always keeps his promises. Everything they do turns to gold, right? The products that their businesses provide have good quality. They have good reputation. They're intelligent. They're far-sighted people. This guy should be king. This family should be king, right? And so, yeah, this is how nobles emerge from a landholding economy, and that's how kings emerge from nobility. So this is the first episode. I have to get titty with this, right? Because I'm trying to explain and also understand, because I'm improvising here. I want to explain power and religion, right? So in the next episode, I think I'll explain why religions are made up. Right? Why do religions exist? They think, oh, it's because religions are about connecting with the sacred and divine. It's about connecting with something transcendental and connecting with a higher purpose. Yes, right? Religions predate politics, like or they exist at the same time, right? But what kings will do is that they will realize, okay, it's actually impossible for me to control all these people just off my reputation, because people might forget that I exist, right? Or my future generations might not behave as well as I did, and I might lose my reputation. Or there might be competing kings, and my throne might soon be lost, or someone might assassinate me. So if you're a king, you're very paranoid, right? Because there's all these nobles that depend on you to defend them, and you really can't, like, right? So if you're getting attacked by all different sides, and your resources become spread too thin, then you can actually, your estate can collapse, right? So if you're a king, you want even more power. How do you gain more power? With propaganda. And what you do is you co-opt the religions of the people, and you basically make up a god that's more powerful than the other gods, right? So you basically say that my power comes from the most powerful god of all. My god comes from a monotheistic being that is the originator of all the pagan gods that everyone else worships, right? So because my god is more powerful than the gods of the commoners, and also more powerful than the gods of the weaker nobles, than me as the king, I have divine right to rule over everyone else, right? And so this is what I'll explain in the next episode. So thank you for watching. Yes, this is a very long-winded explanation. I don't rehearse these videos, as you can tell. And I will explain more in the next episode.